Coronavirus outbreaks across Southeast Asia, fueled by the Delta variant, are squeezing business activities in the region and disrupting global supply chain. Japanese automaker like Toyota was forced to suspend operations at all three of its factories in Thailand starting July 20. The COVID-19 pandemics continue to have a significant impact on Thailand's automotive industry. What about automotive industry in Indonesia? We will talk more about it with Yohannes Nagoi, General Chair of Gaikkindo, Indonesian Automotive Manufacturers Association. Mr. Yohannes, we've seen resurgence of COVID-19 infections in Indonesia since the end of June, followed by a broader movement restrictions policy. Does it give a significant impact on Indonesia's automotive industry?
Yeah, well, definitely that we are having a real problem in Indonesia by having this kind of pandemic of COVID in Indonesia, especially since last June. And then when I think it's early July, the government is actually implementing the lockdown in Indonesia. So definitely we are suffering about all these things. But we know that basically it's not only Indonesia in the Asian region that having this kind of problem, but also the other countries such like Thailand, Philippines, or even Vietnam having this kind of same problem as well. So luckily that we heard that basically some other country having the problem in running their productions, but in Indonesia, we are work together with the Ministry of Industrials, and then the Ministry of Industrial have their own strategy in implementing the industry implementation in Indonesia during the COVID. So maybe have you heard about the IOMKI? IOMKI is basically an Indonesian wording which is actually Izin Operasional dan Mobilitas Kegiatan Industri, which is basically issued by the government, by the Ministry of Industrials. And then in this kind of IOMKI, we have some category like critical, essentials, and everything. And then automotive is actually in the critical area, which means that we can run the production, but with a very tight health protocol. Means basically we have to implement such like that the distance with using the very good mask, and then checking the temperatures with only 50% of the employee or even so many percent of the employees. So we are working hard on that one. Luckily, up to now, there is no closing down of the factory of automotive in Indonesia. We can still running, even though some of them is basically maybe cannot full running, but at least we can run the production in Indonesia. Unlike the other country where they have to stop totally the productions and everything. So Indonesia, we have this kind of situations. That basically.
Okay, what about the retail sales? Do you see there will be a slowdown in the third quarter of 2021 with the automotive retail sales, Mr. Yohannes?
Yeah, so definitely because people movement is actually being restricted. Of course, that the retail sales is actually going down. But again, luckily, the government have the program which is actually the value at the luxury tax is actually being discounted. That's going to be end by this August. So people are still buying the cars because waiting until end of August and everything will be changed, you know. So in July, closing of July, we are dropped, but around 11 to 12% drop comparing to the previous month. So it's not that bad. And hopefully in August, after we try to giving some rooms for business to do some things, hopefully that the sales can be increased again.
Okay, talking about the role in global automotive industry, what is exactly the role of Indonesia, and what can we do to make a sustainable, contribute to a sustainable global supply chain?
Okay, if you're looking at Indonesia, Indonesia is a very huge country in terms of populations. We have 270 million people. And our GDP per capita is now growing to about around $4,100 per each, you know, so which is actually very high, and then it's going to 5,000 in the near futures. Means basically the buying power is there. So Indonesia is a very attractive country for the automotive industry. Okay. Nevertheless, I'm going to explain to you, Indonesia is also a country where we produce the car that's only produced in Indonesia, in the world. Such, for example, Toyota Kijang is only produced in Indonesia. Okay, and then Avanza Xenia, Daihatsu Xenia, Toyota Avanza is also only produced in Indonesia. And then the Rush and Terios, Agia and Ailia, Rocky and Race, Grand Max. And then for Mitsubishi, for example, Expander is also only produced in Indonesia. Isuzu, for example, for Traga is only produced in Indonesia in the world. Suzuki, we have the Ertiga only produced in Indonesia. So with this kind of situation, Indonesia is playing a very major role in automotive industry in the world, because some of the products, and quite many, only produced in Indonesia. Means basically, if we cannot produce, then the world will be shortage of supplies. That's why the government is implementing IOMKI, and we are very lucky basically to have that kind of IOMKI. And we have to remember the IOMKI itself is basically a very high health protocol is implemented on that one. And so far we are happy because there is no automotive industrial cluster happen in Indonesia. So we are implementing very tightly on that one. So Indonesia role in the automotive is very important, especially in ASEAN, and then in the future as well.
From what you've said, can I say that Indonesia is one of the major players in automotive industry regionally or globally, Mr. Yohannes?
Yep, I can say that, but we have to expand also the basis of the industrial, because at this moment we only producing car which is actually categorized as MPV. Meanwhile, the other cars, for example, like the SUV, which is having a bigger market in the world, we have some producing, but not the only one in the country and in the world, I mean. So if we can have producing a special SUV, which is only produced in Indonesia, then our position will be stronger in the future then.
What could Gaikkindo do to support Indonesia's government to become a bigger player in this industry?
Okay, we work very close with the Ministry of Industrials, of course, because the Ministry of Industrial is the one that basically giving us all the support. And then together with the Ministry of Industrial, we approaching the principles of the automotive in the world, such from Korea, such from Japan, and also from China. And then in the future, we also approaching some country like Europe and US. So we come and try to approach the principle and make Indonesia becoming the production base for the certain key product, and then becoming the production base also for the export. That basically we play and we work together with the Ministry of Industrials.
So we'll see more, maybe what you say, more productions in Indonesia. We are inviting investors from Korea, South Korea, from Japan, also from China, Mr. Yohannes.
Yeah. So basically, we don't want just to be the MPV production in the world for Indonesia. Okay. We want to have a wider product, and then a wider and more advanced technology, such as the electric cars or the hybrid cars or whatever. We want it to be produced in Indonesia, because that one is going to be the futures of the product in the automotive industry in the futures. Okay.
Back to the story in Thailand, when Toyota was forced to suspend operations at all of 3 of its factories. We also see the similar restrictions in Malaysia, Vietnam, Philippines, and also in Indonesia. How to get up from this adversity?
Okay. The country which is actually can manage the pandemics earlier is going to be the winner. And the key is basically in the vaccines of the COVID itself. I think Indonesia is doing very well on that ones. So when the more people get vaccinated, and then the pandemic can be controlled, and I think Indonesia is actually doing very well. If you see for the last few days that basically the people that get infected is actually getting down, and then the people getting recovered is actually going very high. Hopefully Indonesia can be the winners in ASEAN regions for these situations, you know.
Yes, we also have a better pandemic situation, not only in Indonesia, but also in the region in Southeast Asia, and continue the global economic recovery. Especially, we want to see a better automotive industry in Indonesia. Thank you, Pak Yohannes Nagoi, Mr. Yohannes Nagoi, for your time, and have a nice day.